I just had like a little thing that I like looked up. So it's been 20 years since Canada was first sending its troops into Afghanistan. At that time, I was in fifth grade. I was super young, so I didn't really understand what was going on. The Canadian Armed Forces have lost 159 soldiers in the fighting, and I'm assuming like billions of dollars in this war, only to pull out and leave the country like this, along with all the other NATO nations. So, what is going on, and how do we? First of all, how are you? I feel like we've been chatting this week, and I know this has been like personally difficult, but also like it's hard work to do. It's not easy, and you inspire me in a lot of ways. So not to be awkward, but
No, Sam. First of all, thank you so much for having me. Thank you to OnCanada Project. I've been your fan and OnCanada Project's fan since my friend Jesse told me about it. And you guys are doing incredible work. So you are the inspiration. I feel like there's been so many high-level conversations about all of this whole crisis, as it is with any other crisis. And I think we need to kind of bring it down to the ground, talk about the main issues here, talk about like kind of stop playing this blame game and work on what we can actually do moving forward. It's not good enough to say, okay, why didn't this happen? Why did this happen? And, like be stuck in the past. We need to focus on like a resolution centered discussion and move forward, um, hopefully on the same page with others who are part of this. But before we begin, I'd just like to recognize and address like it's something that's been on my mind for such a long time that we are on Indigenous territory, and that I personally am on the territory of the Mississaugas of the New Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And I've never been so grateful. I mean, I'm always grateful, but I feel like now it's just, it really hits you. We're sharing this land with individuals that have been colonized, just like my own people. And I think it's something that I always think about throughout like my school and all the political science studies and Indigenous studies that I've done. The feeling is so mutual, the feeling of having your home stripped away from you. So to be here and to have that safety, to have that security, I can't be more grateful, and I'm really appreciative.
thank you. I could never have said it better. That's exactly the whole thing, eh? Like, okay, so because we try to keep these lives within 30 minutes, and if it goes over and you're comfortable, that's fine. It's just, I'm always trying to keep it within a certain frame. I want to spend the bulk of this live, and we chatted a little bit about this, talking about next steps and what we can do as Canadians, as a community, and as a country. But I feel like to invite more people into taking action, we should take a little bit of a step back, because a lot of millennials and Gen Z, we were quite young when the war in Afghanistan started in 2001, or the most recent situation. So can you give me like high level what's
Yeah, like, I mean, Afghanistan's been stuck in a permanent state of war for over 40 years, for decades. Our people have been suffering. Our people have been left out of the conversation. We've been left out of Western media. The only time you really hear about us is in the most negative of frameworks. Often we're used as, one of my friends put it so well on Twitter, a citation in a paper, or as the enemy in a movie, you know? And because of that, unfortunately, I think the crisis and the situation, and one of my posts that I had done that went viral that I think like really resonated with people was that we keep hearing Afghanistan is on the brink of a humanitarian crisis. No, that is not our lived experiences. That is not the lived experiences of my parents. It's not the lived experiences of their parents. We have been already stuck in a humanitarian crisis, and the problem is that the world wasn't listening. And what we're seeing today is an unfortunate reality of what happens when the world doesn't listen, what happens when the international community walks away from the table and abandons a country that many of the international players in this game put in this state of war, right? So, I mean, I urge my friends, I urge even family, even members of the Afghan community who are not too well versed on the history of Afghanistan, because we've heard it from our parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had to go and do research. I learn something new every day, particularly now because of the advocacy that's needed, and you don't want to provide like inaccurate information. You want to be credible. I feel like I'm learning every single day, and if it wasn't for the experiences of my parents, if it wasn't for them kind of urging me and telling me stories about their homeland, I don't think I ever would have been that interested in learning, right? But I mean, my sister, my brother, and I, like, we always took it upon ourselves to sit down and just discuss these things and ask questions, and also question ourselves, like, what do we need to know about this, right? So it's a, how can I say, it's a long story, you know, but if you go back, I think the main things are we are the center, we are Central Asia. So a group in the States, they've tried to reframe where we're from. They call it the SWANA. So it's the Southwest Asia and North Africa, I believe. Um, a lot of people inaccurately think that we're from the Middle East. We are not the Middle East. We are Central Asian, South Central Asian. We are in the center. We are in the perfect geopolitical position. And this is why for so many years there has been attempts at colonization, there has been foreign intervention, and not only are we in the center of like the perfect geopolitical point between, think about it, India, Pakistan,
Mm-hmm.
China, Russia, like we border all of these very powerful countries, Iran. So we're almost like the perfect eagle's view, right? The birds, the nest. And we've never been colonized, right? The attempts have always been there, starting with the British, moving on to the USSR and the Soviet, and then we saw so many other types of intervention, and of course the US. But the problem arose when the US interfered, and at that time the president was, his name was Najibullah, and they removed him from power. And instead of putting somebody in place at that time, they just left it open, right? And vacuums of power were created across the country. And because of these vacuums of power, different groups, some of them freedom fighters, others groups like the Taliban, or who are now considered the Taliban, were formed, and civil war, you know, interrupted the nation. So what we're seeing now is not, for many of us on social media, not the result of the past 2 weeks. It's not the result of the past 3 months. It's not the result of the past year. This is a result of the US-led war, which they began in 2001, but I'm sure had a hand in much prior to that. And unfortunately, the effects of this war and the people who are paying the price for this war, the people who never asked for this war, are the innocent civilians on the ground, who are now in the most difficult position, in the most dire situation. And when everything has been taken from our land, what I was saying before, on top of the geopolitical positioning that we're in, we also very the land, the mineral resources of our land, it's abundant, and opium is abundant. And because of these things, right, these foreign states wanted to come and obviously strip the land of everything it has. So 40 years of war, I'm sure you can imagine, has not only
Yeah.
left an impact on our people, our Afghan people, but it's also left an impact on our environment, on our structure, on the stability of our healthcare system, of our education systems, of, obviously, as you can see today, of our government. Um, and again, like, the people are paying the price. So,
And it's, you know, so I'm my back, like I was born in Canada, but my parents are from Sri Lanka. So hearing, you know, about the effect of uh, colonizers or people attempt, like, you know, that the fallout of that, like we often call these countries developing countries, but they're really recovering from some form of like Western interference
yeah.
and just trying. to like make sense of it after the land is pillaged, after the people are abused, after people are killed. They it's gross. And I think what really grosses me out a lot, and I don't want to go too far all over the place, is that like the people at the, like, it's like a Victor's storytelling of it. So when you go and look it up, and like Victor, I hate saying it like that, but the West has like these leaders of these countries in the West have platforms that they get to stand on, and they get to tell us the narrative.
They get to, yeah, they control the narrative every single time.
And you can't, like, you want to trust these people. I mean, we it's a democracy. You put them in their place, but like in their roles, but you don't hear the other side. You don't hear from those communities. And I think that's the magic of social media, although there's like a lot of shit on it, is the fact that community building happens. We hear from people like you, we hear from other experts, we see live footage. You can't, it's like they can keep saying what they want to say, but we can see what's happening. We can read like alternative reports from the government, from the government stuff, and we know that like they had an opportunity to not handle this in the way that they did and chose not to take it.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. We're this, like, I think for many it comes as a shock. Why is Afghanistan suddenly being talked about now?
Mm-hmm.
Afghanistan's been a country that has been overwhelmed with war for so long. What's changed? And the reality of it is, as much as some people don't want to admit it, digital media and social media speaks volumes. And it's something that we did not have, at least not to this extent, back in 2001 with the 9/11 attacks. We didn't have it afterwards. So the narrative at that time, and the U.S.'s reasoning for being in Afghanistan was a narrative that they were controlling, right? So around Osama bin Laden, around the war on terror. You heard at that time with the Bush administration, constantly you would hear the war on terror, the war on terror. And when you heard the war on terror, automatically it was not Osama bin Laden or the Taliban that was just in your mind. No, it was Afghanistan and the Afghan people, right? So their unprecedented Western presence in my country, in my parents' country, in our homeland, was continuously trying to be, I guess, verified, right? By this narrative of, oh, no, we have to go because we have to protect our security, right? That's what the 9/11 attacks ended up resulting in. It ended up resulting in another decades of war, which we're now seeing today.
Yeah.
Look how it's ended, right? When the reality of it is, U.S. intervention in Afghanistan was not limited to, and today we see that. Why are the Taliban still, if the U.S. were really there to take over the Taliban or to prevent the Taliban from gaining control, then why in less than a week were they able to gain that control? So what were they doing, right? There's another funny tweet going around saying, if you want to know the definition of useless, like completely useless, look to the U.S. because they went in to fight a war that they created, and then they left, and that war still continues. So when we see this, we think, okay, so I'm sorry to say this, what the hell? But what the hell were they doing for the past 10 years? Why were they there? Why were they there? And the answer to that, and for people who understand the geopolitical positioning of Afghanistan, and they understand the natural mineral and resource wealth that we have as a nation, they will understand that the United States of America was in Afghanistan for one reason and one reason only, not only to destabilize the nation and to completely create all this division that we see today, unfortunately, is ripping the country apart, but also to extract the resources that today they're utilizing, right, for capitalism in their own homeland. So to me, that's the reasoning behind this whole war, this U.S.-led intervention. And obviously there's other players in the game. I'm not saying that there isn't. Every neighboring state has a role in this war as much as the U.S. does, and Canada has a role in this as well, and we were complicit in this war, and our intelligence was slow, and we are in the position that we are now, where we have Canadians and journalists and Afghan Canadians on the ground who are still stuck there, who we did not bring back fast enough. So I know the government of Canada is working hard to find a solution. I know that, the situation is out of control. I know there's chaos. I know it's hard to go back and to evacuate people because of the situation at the airport right now. But I think the question that Canadians, Americans, and that the world should be asking is, why were we so slow to the punch? Why were they always 10 steps ahead, right? And I think when we ask that question, it's very clear that there's something fishy about this. There's something weird about this. This all just seems planned.
It doesn't feel like, and I've been leaning into what, when it doesn't feel right, pause and think about it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because they can tell us we had no way of knowing the Taliban would take over this quickly. But it kind of feels like there's a whole department dedicated to intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
and that and there's multiple countries in NATO, and that it really shouldn't have been that hard to take that time. Don't tell us now that you care about the people there. What were you doing for 20 years?
What were you doing?
And when you made exit strategy plans for your people to leave, how dare you even consider leaving behind people who helped you risk their lives?
Absolutely, 100%. I think that's what's the most concerning right now. And like I said, the immediate kind of priority for Canada, for the international community, should be get those vulnerable people out. Whether they were supporters of your government, whether they were interpreters, whether they're journalists, whether they're women and girls, if they are in some sort of danger, if they're under some sort of threat, there's a moral responsibility, like I said, on the shoulders of every single one of these international actors, on these international states, to step in and do something about it. Why? Because they were too late to the game, because they didn't foresee what was coming, because the US, in the most shameful and disgusting statement that I've ever seen from a president, and I thought Bush and Trump were bad, has taken no accountability and is basically walking away from the table, suggesting, after, like I said, a permanent state of 40 years of war, that the people of Afghanistan don't have the willpower, these are his words, did not have the willpower to defend themselves. He said, we can give them the tools, we can give them the weapons, we can give them the training, but if we can't give them the will.
That was such, I lost.
It's just
I don't know how you watched that and didn't break your television.
Oh my God, I was about to break my TV. I'm not kidding you. I wanted to even say, Mr. President, you took away our willpower, and yet our people still have the will. They're still fighting. They're still fighting for certain provinces that have not yet been seized. The people are they're stuck there. What do you put them in this position? Don't you dare turn around and point fingers at my country and my people and tell us that we have no will after you came, literally led a 10-year and plus, longer than that too, in my opinion, state of war in my country, and then say, oh, I'm sorry, there's absolutely nothing we can do about it, and by the way, they're the ones that are at fault.
And let's not forget, and I want to pivot away from America to talk more about Canada and, our role here. But let's not forget that not only is he, is Biden the president of the United States, he was formerly the vice president of the United States and was also a senator that voted initially when, was there when those decisions were happening. So don't be it's just
it's shameful.
It's gaslighting.
It's just gaslighting. Yeah, I've heard this word all year, gaslighting, and I don't think there's a better example than right now to describe what this is. And what's more sad is that I have family in the United States who supported his campaign, who got him elected to, he would not be there. Kamala Harris would not be where they are right now if it wasn't for the Afghan Americans and their contributions to the Biden campaign. Because what we're seeing right now is not just Biden turning away from Afghanistan, right? No, he's turning away from, like I said, the contributions of Afghan Americans, the contributions of those who he made promises to. And I think he's speaking today again, and I'm not even interested in what he has to say because he's a joke of a president in my eyes, in my opinion. But so if he's not going to take accountability, right, then who will? And if we're going to continue playing this like blame game, right, isn't it the responsibility of the international community to put pressure on the United States and to say, no, we are not going to accept this. You're not allowed to walk away from the table. You're not going to allow the international community to clean up the mess that the United States has created, albeit with the support of other international state actors, fine. But why is the United States not part of the conversation? Why are we not hearing, about like the word America or the hashtag America in every single social media campaign? What is going on?
Yeah.
And why isn't anyone wondering what's going on?
I think I think what I'm also struggling with is, and can we talk a little bit about, like, I mean, we've established that Biden is the other. I know Donald Trump was trash. Like, I understand that because he didn't take accountability, but for anything ever, like, I don't think in his life. But how is this any different? Like, how can you pretend to have the moral high ground? So, like, let's just, for our own mental health, let's stop talking about the states, even though, Canada's a part of NATO, and NATO went in with America. It's an organization that is like a collaborative, like military alliance between a few countries, Western-based countries, and they supported this American war on terror, and followed America into Afghanistan, sent troops, worked with people there, stayed there, all of that. So what is our role here? And is the aid that we've promised and 20,000 refugees enough?
Absolutely not. It's not enough. But I think the government of Canada recognizes that. And I say this because they have been open and willing to sit down with Afghan Canadians, unlike the American president. They have been open and willing to take our suggestions from community members that are working so hard on the ground. But is it enough? No, hell no. That's not enough. 20,000? There's 47 million people in the country who need to be evacuated. And if I'm not saying the burden only rests on Canada's shoulders. Don't get me wrong there. I understand we are always a leader in international humanitarian assistance, in development, on the women and girls file. However, our role now has to become putting pressure on international community members and leaders and telling them, okay, we stepped up. Now, what are you going to do? Right? And it can't be the smaller nations like Kosovo. Like, it has to be a united collective effort. Why? Like, if they get it, why doesn't some of the G7 get it? So we definitely, like, we owe it to our Canadian values. We owe it to our Canadian troops and their families who have sacrificed so much, and we continuously see this echoing, whether it's from US veterans, Canadian veterans. So what was all this for? This is what you're hearing, right? And if you're keeping up with the media and if you're keeping up with the news, they are speaking out and they are upset about it and they actually are doing something about it. There's crowdfunding that has been put together by veterans across all of North America. There's advocacy and amplification, and it's embarrassing, right, that the U.S. troops and Canadian troops have to say this, that 20,000 is not enough, that our intelligence was slow, that we were too slow to the ballgame. We need to figure out a way to make up for it. And like I said, I know that the government is putting towards efforts to do this. I know they're working around the clock to do this. But we as Canadian citizens also need to continue holding them accountable, especially in the midst of an election where we know there's so many other things going on. And I appreciate that they're willing to listen, right? And they themselves know that they have the responsibility. It's a moral responsibility. And you and I have talked about this so many times. We can't keep allowing this issue to only be an Afghan issue. This is not just an Afghan issue. This is a world issue. This is a humanitarian crisis that has gone ignored for over 40 years, for decades. And now when everyone's trying to step in, they're seeing it's almost too late. The borders are closed, the airport is inaccessible. So why are we so late to the game, and what are we going to do about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we are priding ourselves in being leaders in the international realm, then we need to step up. And I hope the Prime Minister will step up. And knowing and seeing from the past and from the leadership we've taken on other humanitarian crises, I know we will, right? But again, it's a responsibility of Canadians everywhere, and this is the main point of our live for why the Afghanistan crisis is a Canadian issue, why
Yep.
Canadians need to care. We have to. There's people dying, right?
Yep.
Like over 70,000 civilians have lost their lives throughout this war. Over 75 journalists, 400 humanitarian aid workers. Don't even get me started on the troops. So we're just gonna look past like Biden. We're gonna stand at a podium and say, "Yeah, shit, it happened. There's nothing we can do about it. Too
Right.
bad. Oh, it's on the Afghan people. Let their completely deconstructed government. That's
Yeah,
not
you
even a government.
destabilized the entire nation, but
You
yeah, it's up to them.
destabilize the nation, and then you're telling them to step up. How
Um,
it's so childish.
it's literally pathetic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's terrifying to me because up until social media, what else did they get away with?
Yeah, oh my God, that's the
Not
terrifying
just them,
part. That's
everyone.
that's the
What else
terrifying
did they get
part.
away with?
These statistics, the data, first of all, they're provided by the people on the ground, they're provided by the US. They're probably not only underreported, but they've been meddled with, most likely. Um, I've said this so many times. This what we've seen in Afghanistan for the past decades of war that they've been in, not only a international humanitarian law, but the very basic principles of human rights, of equality, of peacekeeping that the UN prides themselves in. So where is the UN? Where is NATO? Where is everybody? Like, where is the international community? This is the question, right? Canada and Canadians, we're always there. We always step up. We always step up to the plate. And 20,000, you're right. Absolutely, it's not enough. And we do need to demand that not only should we increase that number like we did when the Syrian refugees came influx to Canada, but also figure out other ways. Pressure the international community, right?
100%. So, um, we like there isn't an immediate fix to the Taliban take over Afghanistan. Like there might have been a preventative one before the troops started withdrawing. Obviously, that's not possible at this point. So when we start to talk about what are our next steps, I always like to think of it, what can I do as just Sam? What can I do in my community? And then what can I demand from our system or our structure and our country and the bigger things. So I'm going to tell you what I think as someone who's not from Afghanistan. I'm Hindu. I'm removed from the situation. I've been learning a lot about it recently, but here's what I feel like is my responsibility. And then tell me where I can do better and how our community can do better too. There's a lot of Islamophobia in this country. I know not everyone in Afghanistan is Muslim, but there's a lot of Islamophobia in this country. Like we just had a terrorist attack in this country from this. We have to combat that in our circles, in our conversations, in like showing up for the Muslim community, shutting down people who, and like it could be compassionately, it could just be like, shut up. Like, no, we're not doing this. When they say things that are racist, when they make blanket statements about everybody from Afghanistan or everyone who's Muslim, you have that power as an individual when you are in communities, when you're in circles, when you're in conversations with friends, when you see people comment things, you get to do that. You get to lead change at that level, at that individual level that has an impact. So that is always what I say is like my first thing is like, how do I have those conversations myself in my community? How do I challenge people? And I mean, we've all got that uncle that's never going to see it differently. And I get that, like, I get that, guys, but like, what can we do with people our own age, even like, just what's that step? I also think we all have platforms. Like by virtue of watching this, you have a platform, you're on social media. Share content from people like Neelu, from people who are doing this work, who are from the Afghan community, and amplify. There's power in that. There's power in normalizing conversations around this. We can't, this is a Canadian issue. Not only is it a Canadian issue because Neelu is Canadian and therefore cares about this and therefore we should all care about it, but also like the fact that Canada was directly involved in the destabling of this country, it is a Canadian issue. So we've got to show up. I also think that if you're financially able to donate, and I think you have a list of places that we can put money into, I think that is really important as well. So I always go like, what can I do as an individual? Because that's the one that's always so scary is like, oh, but what can I do? I'm just one person. You're a lot more cooler than you think you are, everybody. Like you have power. The second step is I look at my community and what I can do. With these refugees coming here, how do we make sure they are safe and lead dignified lives, that the systems are set up, that they're supported, and what can we do to help in our local areas to ensure that those communities are set up? How can we create community discussions around this? How can we create a safer space? And then systemically, it's like what you were saying around 20,000 isn't enough. What's the next step? What action can we take to put pressure on countries like America, who is now like gaslighting the shit out of the planet? How do we force those players to be like, excuse me, like that's not true. Like it's not true, do more. And how do we show up to support and use that power that Canada does have as a nation? And obviously like I can't call Biden, but Trudeau can. So how do you put pressure on people like our leaders, like your MP, your like, if you, I know it seems like futile because sometimes I do it myself and I feel overwhelmed, but keep messaging them, keep calling them. I know it's an election period, but right now you have an elected representative. Tell them you need their attention. Okay, so that's the stuff that I was like, okay, these are the things I need to start doing. Like I have to show up this way. How else can I show up, and how can our community show up? What else can we be doing?
I mean, you asked the perfect question, right? You have to check yourself. You have to sit down and you have to be like, what can I do? And it's not about, do I care about Afghanistan or my Afghan friends or my Muslim friends or even like humanitarian issues. It's just, do I care about the basic rights and the basic right to live for human beings on this planet? So that's what you do. And if the answer to that question is yes, the next step is to say, all right, there are people who are literally losing their lives who do not have that basic right to live or basic right to freedom. What can I do to make a difference? They can't speak for themselves. Their freedom of speech is slowly being stripped away day by day and has been for the past, like I said, 40 plus years. What can I do to raise my voice in support of them and to pressure whether it's Canada or another country, my home, to come to the table and do something about it? So a great time to ask this question because two awesome things happened in the past 48 hours. One has actually been a campaign that a bunch of incredible young Afghans across the GTA have been putting together since January. It's called CCAP. So it's a campaign for Afghan peace, and the organization that's leading it is AYEDI, AYEDI. They're a youth and development initiative. They have all of the calls to action and all the tools you need to go. All you have to do is click a button, put your email in, click a button. It's that simple. And then in terms of donating, one, I would really highly encourage everyone to make sure you do your research. There's a lot of crowdfunding, GoFundMe pages that are that are up and running, which is awesome. But at the same time, we need to be wary that the money is going into the right hands. And at a time like right now, where a lot of the banks in Afghanistan are still closed, we have to make sure that there's accredited organizations on the ground who have secure lines who will still be receiving the money, because humanitarian aid is required right now, not tomorrow, yesterday. That's when the people needed it. So an amazing group of incredible Canadian women they've committed to supporting the IDRF. So the IDRF, International Development Relief Foundation, they're a national charitable organization, very well recognized. They're working with 2 organizations on the ground who are going to be supporting with food and hygiene kits. And if you want to know more about that, I'll put the link in my bio, or you can visit idrf.ca/Afghanistan. There's, of course, other incredible organizations and charitable organizations to donate to as well. But right now, like I said, we have to continue keeping Afghanistan on the map, especially in the midst of an election. We have to make it an election issue. We can only do that collectively. And the awesome campaign, CCAP, like they have all the tools you need, all the calls to action that you need right now. So go ahead and like visit IEDI's page, and if you have even like 2 minutes out of your day, fill out a form, send it to your MP. Make sure that for the next 30 or 33 days, for as long as the election is going to be taking place, that our government and that Canadians understand and realize that we failed Afghanistan and the Afghan people for 40 years. The international community failed them. And it's time we do something about it, right? So the calls to action are there. The CCAP and IEDI are also, they've given IDRF endorsements. So they're all kind of working together. And I remember I sent you a message that it's in times of disaster and distress that the community mobilizes. But if, like you said, every single person has a platform. Just because we see these big numbers like 100,000 followers, this many followers, that doesn't matter. I always bring it back down to, you have 100 followers, you have 50 followers, pretend you have 50 people or 100 people in a room. That's a lot of people, right? Don't let a number determine your impact. Your impact speaks volumes, especially in a time right now where one TikTok can go viral. Even if you have 5 followers, you have impact, right? So just think about like what you were thinking about. Think about how I can help, how I can make a difference. And the who and the what is already taken care of by this campaign. They're awesome. So right. I'm 100% like on board with them. They're incredible individuals. They've not only been working on like Afghan community initiatives throughout this past like week, but for the past like 5 years, I think they've been on stuff like this. So highly recommend. And if you're looking to donate, IDRF, they're an accredited organization. And if you need more information, literally just visit any Afghans page right now. I think every person is talking about it. So, but we can't just let Afghans do this talking, and we also can't just let Afghans do the listening, right? There's no point of us protesting to our own people or to ourselves. So especially in a time where I should mention, like, there's a lot of emotional burden and grief that many of us are dealing with. Some of us even silently, right? We're still feeling that pain, and our parents are feeling that pain, and there's a lot of mental trauma and stress. And for those of us who have been trying to advocate, like, we haven't really had the time to grieve properly because we're like, okay, what do we do next? What do we do next? But see how you can help and become part of the conversation, which I think is what OnCanada Project is best at doing, right? Getting people involved.
It can't be like everything that you said. I echo it. I support it. I want to amplify it. And I think like the part that I'll come back to a little bit is this idea of like, it can't just be the Afghan community like screaming that they need help or that they need, because to be honest, I'd argue you've been doing that for 20 to 40 years anyways. So
yeah.
they can't just keep doing this on their own. Like, And what does it say if we don't show up? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about Biden sucking. We're talking about these leaders effing up. But now I know better, right? I understand. So
Yeah.
what do I do with that knowledge? Like, if you
Right.
know it, do something with it.
Yes.
Whatever your piece is, like, take it, own it, do something, because we are better than these leaders. Not to be like a asswipe, but like Biden right now, like, I wouldn't do that. If I screw up, I'm telling people I messed up, and I'm going to find a way to, like, I know that about myself. So then then how do I like live that truth?
Right. No, absolutely. Like I said, like it's not just the Prime Minister, it's not just the government of Canada that owes it to Canadian values. It's all Canadians, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to call ourselves Canadian and we're going to pride ourselves in our diversity and our multicultural values and love and kindness and support for one another, then this is the ultimate test, right? And I should also note on that front, I think this whole crisis has unfortunately resulted in a lot of divisive politics between people, whether it's because of religion, whether it's because of culture. I think we all need to take a step back and realize, one, that's what Western imperialism wants, more division.
Mm-hmm.
Two, politics is not the main issue right now, right? We've already failed on that front. The international community has failed on that front. We need to put people before politics. And where we can make the greatest impact right now and where the greatest impact is needed right now is in humanitarian aid of 2.7 plus million people who are right now displaced within their own country, right? Kabul has become like the Toronto of Canada. There's like millions of people there right now without shelter, without food, without any kind of support, baby formula. Like there's so much that they need there right now. So people before politics would be the message that I send. And maybe I'll also take this time, because I know we're running out of time, like to my Afghan people, I love you guys so much. I know like it's such a hard burden and a heavy burden to be carrying on your shoulders. And I can't express like the amount of people that have taken on work from every corner, right? Across Canada, not just across Canada, globally. The mental baggage is real. And I've already posted this and said this, like the guilt, the overwhelming guilt and survivor's guilt and the guilt for what our parents have gone through, it's real. So just sending you all love as much as I can. And like, thank you to every single one of you for everything that you're doing. We have to keep amplifying, be in the news, reach out to your local news organizations and say, you need someone to talk to? Here, talk to me, talk to my friend, talk to my dad, talk to anybody. Like if the second we stop talking about this and is the second the world forgets, and everything that we've been working towards for the past however many days, however many months, it's all going to go right back down the drain, and those poor people back home are going to be forgotten, and most of them are going to end up losing their lives, right? Like, we can't sugarcoat it. They call it a humanitarian crisis for a reason, right? So, and to Canadians all across Canada who are part of the conversation and who are supporting, and to those of you even watching right now, I'm so sorry I haven't even like said thank you for the viewers, for even caring. Like I said, yeah, it's 100 people are watching right now, and probably they've been coming and going. Like, fill one room with 100 people and you'll understand how much of an impact you have. So yeah, and obviously OnCanada Project,
Oh,
thank
so
you so
you
much
don't have to
for,
thank us. That's what the platform's
oh
for.
man, you built your platform from the ground up. That deserves so much recognition, and you've done it in such a short amount of time, and you've constantly tried to amplify the voices of those who are always left unheard. And I always say this, like, when it comes to international situations and crisis, Afghanistan has always been last. We are last on the scales of justice. Every single time we're forgotten, and finally we're able to like have our voices heard. And it's like, for me, 20 years, because that's how long I've been alive, and for my parents, 40 years, and whoever else. But like, we're finally able to like let it out. So I encourage every Afghan across the world, let it out. Like, now's the time. You want to scream about it, scream. You want to cry, cry. You want to tell your story, tell your story. Don't let anyone tell you how to create awareness or how to make an impact, or how to advocate for change. Just do it. Go out there and do it, literally. So
Thank you so much for taking the time to doing the emotional labor and the work so that we can all understand. Um, I really appreciate it. And you really, really inspire me to want to show up more. So
You're already showing up all over the place. So you inspire us, all of us, I'm sure, who are watching, and everyone that's been following along with your platform. You're incredible. I know that's a heavy burden to take too, but
it's
I
not
think
though. It's the easiest
behind
thing to do to amplify other
to
people.
amplify, yeah, that's true. But
Literally the easiest thing.
behind every single one of us is like our families and our friends, who are always supporting and taking care of us and being there for us. So thank you
Well,
for
thank you. Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining. And it will be saved and people can watch this later. And Nilo, if you ever want to, if you want to come back tomorrow and talk about more, literally the project is at your disposal. Like that's what the community is about. It doesn't feel like someone else's issue. It feels like it's ours too. So, and that's the way we should all feel about this. So of course, OnCanada Project should be talking about it because all Canadians should be talking about this. Um, so thank you so much. And thanks everybody for, this was well over half an hour. Sorry, but
Thanks
um,
for giving me the time again. And yeah, can't wait to talk to you more about this personally and
yeah,
obviously social media and everything. But keep doing what you're doing.
thanks everybody. Bye.